do your own diligence on the buyer. And try and know some example of other acquisition and be able to allocate to it. Explain to your own people, hey, you know what? Look at them. They did that with company XYZ a year ago, and this is what it became. And most of the people, all of the people are still there, and it's working great. And because it's a big company, they had better benefits and everything, better programs and a better 401k. If you can establish that, it's great. If you're on the other end and you know that it's going to be a brutal consolidation, and that, if you have a manufacturing operation, it's going to be scratched off and rolled into a larger plant, and the people will be given a deal. If they're given a deal, either you relocate to the other side of the country or you're fired. If you know that's what's going to happen, then you better think about a monetary incentive to cooperate.
Welcome to M&A Science, where leading M&A practitioners share lessons learned from their experience. If you're interested in keeping up with the latest from M&A Science, visit our website, mascience.com. Subscribe to our free newsletter. It's where we share highlights of our interviews and invitations to events as we build the greatest community of forward-thinking M&A practitioners. Again, that's mascience.com. I'm your host, Kison Patel, CEO and founder of M&A Science. Joining me today is Frederic Lebourg, CEO and Managing Director at Redlands Farm Holding, a subsidiary of the Lebourg Group. The Lebourg Group is one of the 500 largest companies in the world listed on the Paris Stock Exchange under BOL. The group is a conglomerate that manages a number of financial assets, including plantations and financial investments. We're continuing our conversations. This is part 2 of the interview. If you haven't seen the first one, probably should start there. We're going to talk about how to prepare a company for acquisition and ensure business continuity. Frederic, welcome back. Glad we got to pick things up.
Thank you.
Now, I know it's a little bit while, and just to give the quick recap, we talked last time about understanding diligence in general, knowing what the buyer's likely going to look for in that information, so you're prepared for it. How do you handle the dirty laundry if you got that going on in your business? And then there's this plan forward about what's that going to look like if you're planning to stay with the business, move on, having those things. And then we also talked about building the team around doing this, that you're going to need to have the right attorney in place. We touched a bit about deal structure. I wanted to continue the conversation and talk about the process itself and managing it. I think one of the common themes I've heard when you sell a business is the distraction for the management team. That this management team is supposed to be focused on achieving goals. And here we're going to go exercise this process to sell the company, entertain diligence coming in from buyers in the form of request of information and clarification questions. And you don't have a lot of people to work with. There's probably a lot of their functional leaders who are the leaderships driving against these goals. How do you make sure this process doesn't disrupt business operations?
It's complicated and it will disrupt it. No matter how well you prepare in advance, you can't possibly think of every piece of diligence or due diligence that the buyer will want to see. And there may be some unexpected turns. You may end up in a situation where the buyer tells you, well, no, I want to talk to some of your key suppliers and I want to talk to some of your key customers. How do we deal with that? Because immediately you're going to create a massive angst. On the supplier side, they're going to say, oh, well, if a big company is buying this smaller company, more than likely they have their own supplier and I'm going to lose my own business. And that's going to leave scars, if the deal doesn't happen. And worse, on the customer side, you've built a story, you've grown, you've developed a relationship with a customer and everything, and all of a sudden you're telling basically that customer, well, I'm running for the exit and trying to have enough cash and sell in this and sell away. So that's complicated. I mean, you know, and I know when I was in that situation, the part that I found the most difficult was talking to customers, because immediately those customers are no dupes. I mean, they know that things will change. The way you sell, what you have to offer on an ongoing basis in terms of promotion and marketing support and everything. If a larger company acquires you, automatically, you know, they know that it's going to fall into some sort of mold, and the mold of a larger corporation, which has procedures and budgets and where everything is a lot more planned than it may be in a smaller company, which typically is a lot more reactive. So, you know, you don't really help yourself when you're in a situation where all of a sudden you have to reach out to your key customers, because of course, I mean, the people acquiring you will want to talk to the top 10 and not the small ones. And you have to reach out to them and tell them, well, we are going to sell the company, and in 3 months, I may or may not be in this share anymore, and things may change. So it's utterly disruptive to the business.
So that this is pre-close, that
yes.
You're sending communication with customers that there's a transaction in the works.
Yes, this is pre-close. Now, post-close, it really depends what the buyer wants to do, because after all, I mean, this is their house, not yours anymore.
Right.
And, you know, we are placing ourselves in a situation where you're selling a majority, a controlling majority.
Does that happen often? And I can assume that this varies industry by industry on how much of that communication with your own customers, and I don't know if it even goes to the vendors about a transaction that's coming up. Like, why would you start giving that information of a deal to a customer
in advance?
In advance of close. Yep.
Because the buyer will want to talk to them. You know, I mean, as a buyer, what am I buying? I'm buying a book of business. I can tell whatever story I want to a buyer, but until you talk to the person actually purchasing the product, you don't know if it's a fable or a nice presentation or a convenient presentation, or if it's for real. I mean, imagine you're selling to Walmart and, you know, it represents 30% of your business, or Costco, or a big name. And all of a sudden, you know, the buyer knows that he's decided to drop several SKUs or your line entirely during the next reset cycle. So is that, you know, and the buyer will want to know that. So somehow it's very difficult not to get.
Is that still like pre-LOI or post-LOI?
Pre.
Wow.
Most definitely. Post. Well, post. I mean, you know, an announcement will be made anyway. I mean, you know, there is a new sheriff in town, and things will change. You know, one of the worst memories, I would say, and it wasn't really a positive and good memory, is during an acquisition. I mean, I was this time on the selling side. Literally 2 days after the closing, I was summoned to a meeting room, and I was told, well, we are going to fire all of your broker network. Okay, well, we never discussed that. Well, yeah, we have our own brokers, so we are going to fire all of your existing brokers. And here is a letter, and it's going into the fax machine in the next 15 minutes, and your broker network is no more. And there are people, remember, I mean, you know, when you're in a startup mode, I mean, at some point, or not at some point, you will develop a relationship with the people supporting your brand. It's not anonymous. I mean, there are ties that are created and everything. And here you go. All of a sudden, you find an entire network of people all across the country that have helped you and made you who you are and put you in a position precisely to sell your company. So it's tough. I mean, it's tough. And in that specific case, it wasn't prepared. because actually the broker we are supposed to take over from that group didn't even know about the transaction or the line or the product or anywhere. So after that wonderful salvo where all that existing broker network, was fired, literally there was a void for a period of 2 or 3 months where the customers had no support anymore, where the brand wasn't pushed anymore. Not good. Not good at all, obviously. And surprising. The buyer will not necessarily disclose all the steps to you that are going to happen post-closing. And they don't have to. If you haven't handled it into the sales agreement, like carve out some provision about your own people, that's another thing. They may decide, well, we don't like your head of sales, and the guy is gone in 2 months or 1 month with a pittance for a severance. So, all that business of selling one's company takes a heavy human toll, and there will be losers, people who are going to lose their job, people who are going to lose their position. All of a sudden, your VP sales doesn't report to you anymore, is reporting to the VP sales in some corporate office, and a person he doesn't know. And that guy may have a completely different vision for what is supposed to happen. Is going to tell him, no, everything you've planned for this year, I'm scrapping it. I don't like it. And we're doing it all over again. And we're going to do it my way. It's tough. So, yeah, there is an excitement. When you're working on a deal, either side, you really have that goal in mind and you live day by day, night by night about it. And that's really your main focus. And, most of the time you're living on adrenaline. But when it's done, all of a sudden, you don't have your word to say anymore. Other people are doing it for you and deciding about everything for you. And, most of the time you're retained for a period of time to facilitate the transition and everything. But it's tough. And again, you have to look at the people who were in that adventure with you. Most of them probably, if you're in a startup, accepted taking a job for a lesser salary that they could find elsewhere. They made personal sacrifices in times, in money, in everything. And here you go. When you sell a company, sure, you can carve out some provision for your top people, your top executive, but very rarely is a second level of management going to be rewarded in a transaction. You're going to, in a small to mid-sized company, say you have a handful of key people, 5 people. Those, may question mark derive a financial benefit, a personal financial benefit from the transaction, but everyone below that, no. And they literally don't know if they will have a job in 1 month or 2 months. And especially, on all the administrative side and everything, because those are the functions that are most easy to consolidate. Financial, HR, logistics, all of that is what a company acquiring you will try to immediately cut to leverage the benefit of purchasing you, because they already have those people doing the same job. So evidently, they don't want to pay twice.
You're right. It's a balancing, because there's some of these activities that happen that are disturbing from your side, is building the business up and acknowledging the value of the key people through the journey of building the business. But then when you sell it, it's all out of your control, and the other organization's going to have plans. They're going to have their synergy plan and what they're going to do, be it cost synergies, remove some of the redundant roles, and things of that sort. Is there anything you could do to help, or are there considerations you should have from doing a number of these deals that, I don't know if it's the right things or considerations to help alleviate some of that, or is there anything like that?
I guess it goes a lot to fully understanding what company, what acquirer you're dealing with, and what is their corporate culture. Is it something that is centralized? Is it something that is decentralized? How are they operating in other divisions? So no, of course, I mean, this is really hard when you have someone who is considering spending a lot of money to buy you out, to ask incisive questions. So you have to do kind of a backdoor due diligence with people who know people who are working in a division or in a company or at the headquarters, and ask how is it. And at least mentally, you can prepare what's going to happen, and you can actually prepare what's going to happen if you know that it's going to be some sort of bloodbath. But guarantees in terms of nothing will be touched for a period of 1 year, blah, 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 very tough. I mean, that's not when someone wants to buy the company. I mean, they're buying a company because they think you have something, they can make it bigger, and they can make it for less money. So, of course, they're going to be disruptive in the normal course of business.
Right, because as a buyer, I don't want to buy a company and have all these restrictions that, hey, I've agreed to not fire this head of sales, that it's not meeting his numbers.
No, exactly. I mean, it's like you're buying a house and you say, well, yeah, I mean, I agree that in the middle of my garden, there is going to be a path for a neighbor to go through, and then, someone will have a right to walk his dog on your lawn and so forth and so on. I mean, you're going to say no. I mean, heck no, I'm not going to buy that house. Same here. Money talks. I mean, the person spending the money has the power.
I like what you describe selling a business, doing your diligence on the buyer, because that'll give you a sense of how they're going to treat your company afterwards. When you mentioned talking to the people of that company and doing your own diligence.
Well, I mean, try to figure out who they bought before and see what happened.
Who's bought before?
Yeah, I mean, because I mean, rarely a big company, a big corporation has not done recent acquisition, and they're always on the prowl for new things, and
would you do that through the organization and say, hey, curious about some of your recent acquisitions, and see if they opt to make the introduction to those executives? Maybe they're still around or not, or do you sort of go back door?
No, I'd go back door. I mean, again, I mean, it's always contextual. I mean, in an acquisition team, you're going to have people who either genuinely or because it's a way to extract more extraction, are going to be on the friendly side and make you believe that they're somehow your friends, and you're going to have the bad cop, the guy who is always tough, who is always demanding, and so forth and so on. I mean, they're good. I mean, the people in big company have teams where each one has its own role. But in this day and age, you don't really need to ask for what did happen in previous acquisitions. I mean, just research it, and just look at, go through LinkedIn or whatnot, and figure who were the 5-10 people in that company, and where are they now? 6 months after. And you're going to see, if you see 9 out of the 10 are gone, and the one remaining is because he has a contract for another 6 months, well, you pretty much have a clear vision on the future, whatever has been told to you.
Do you talk to them? Do you reach out and talk to them?
Yeah, absolutely. It's easy nowadays.
What does that sound like? Is it, hey, I'm thinking about doing a deal with our friend company over here. I'd love to get your feedback. What does that message sound
like? No, exactly. I mean, this is a simple, genuine question, as personal as you can, and saying, hey, I may be in the same place that you have been 6 months ago or a year ago. Would you mind if we have a phone exchange? Because people don't like to write those things too much. But would you mind having a brief phone exchange, and so that we can discuss your personal experience? And if it's a negative one, people are more likely to do it too. You know, so yeah, and all those people certainly will have restriction on what they can say and a non-disclosure agreement on everything. But if it's a phone conversation, it's easier to establish and it's easier to have, and it doesn't necessarily leave a track record.
I like this idea of doing diligence on the buyer. Going back to just even when you start going through this deal process, you come to terms, you're entertaining the buyer's diligence, and you start bringing more people under the tent. What does that look like? Because in the early beginnings, it's probably just you. The people reach out. What's the order of people that you would get involved?
Yeah, well, I mean, the initial contact, and definitely I personally would be an advocate to keep it to you and just yourself. I mean, it's the first appointment and the first screening. And those are going to be on the basis of a couple of meetings, typically. And I really wouldn't introduce a whole lot of people in that conversation, because again, you're going to create anxieties. You're going to create. It sounds sneaky, I know, but I mean that's a reality. I mean, there is no point creating anxieties if you don't even know yourself if it's going to go anywhere. Most of the time, the first phone call or the first approach you're going to have is going to come from a very junior person. And you don't know the context. You don't know, sometimes you don't even know who the acquirer is going to be. And you get a call. I mean, well, yeah, we've seen your company. We're interested. Would you be interested in talking to us about selling it? Okay, well, where are you? Where are you coming from? And that initial screening, very much like when you're approached by a headhunter, where the first call you're going to get is a junior person doing a basic screening. Well, you have to go past that and really start talking to the actual acquirer representative or the person who will make the decision before you start sharing anything. And then as you start the financial disclosure process, you have no choice. I mean, you got to get your accountant, CFO, or whoever you have, controller, in the loop. Probably very soon HR will come into play too. And, the moment you talk to one, it's a fantasy to believe people are not going to talk to one another. Even if you tell someone, well, okay, it's just you, but don't say anything to anyone. Well, it's not going to happen. Or maybe that will happen for a week, but in 10 days, I mean, everyone will know about it. And at that point, again, people are going to look at you sometimes like, you betrayed us. We invested time, we invested energy, we invested belief, building something with you, for you, and you're dumping us. That's tough. People are not gullible. I mean, they will quickly recognize what's going on. You can wrap it any way you want. You can apply as much lipstick to the pig as you want, but the pig is still the pig.
I guess there's this case of we're going to sell a company and that's it. Story ends there, because that creates a lot of uncertainty. Versus, hey, we're looking to merge with this other company and build a narrative of how we're going to be able to accelerate our growth faster by joining forces with this other company. Is there positioning there that you think of to get that alignment where it's not something that you have to worry about the ripple of the bad news going through, versus can I at least look at it like optimistically? There's a reason we do M&A. It's to create value. No?
The only thing, at the end of the day, the minute you say that and you're playing people's job in play, because that's really what you're doing, the only thing that is going to counteract this, in my opinion, is some form of financial benefit for the actors. And if you can convey the message, whatever happens, you're going to get a year worth of salary if at the end of this acquisition, they decide, or within 6 months after the end of this acquisition, they decide you're not going to stay on board. You'll get a year of salary, you'll get time to figure out things out for yourself and land back on your feet. I mean, all of a sudden, you're creating a situation that, of course, is going to seem a lot more acceptable.
Is this something you could negotiate? And I don't know if anybody would do that. You can, and saying, "Hey, I mean, part of this deal is you got to take care of my."
Absolutely. I mean, and of course, it has to be proportionate to the size of the acquisition. But if you're talking about an acquisition that's going to cost $50 million, if there is $500,000 worth of severance packages or potential severance packages, should they decide not to keep the people on board, they're going to, look at it as a very small fraction of the acquisition price and a cost that may not even happen. So yeah, but at least you're creating something that will make the conversation a lot more easier.
I like that. That's a little bit of good. So you mentioned the finance person. They're going to be obviously organizing a lot of the financial information, HR. Anybody else that you start bringing in, or is it, as you continue
again,
to keep adding?
I mean, sales is tough because, I mean, that's probably the toughest one because, salespeople by nature are typically creative and more emotional and everything. So, at the end of the day, someone who is your CFO, well, that person knows that unless the market sucks, but if the market really sucks, chances are there is not a whole lot of acquisition going on either if you're in a recession, in a deep recession. So, they know that a CFO job in your company and a CFO job in another company is not dramatically different. The sales team is different. I mean, people are taking ownership of the brand, of the product, believe in it. And you're essentially telling them, well, you know what? I mean, you loved it. You bled for it. You spend a lot of weekends on the road doing food shows and this and that. And the rug is going to be plucked from under you. And personally, I have found this is the department and the group of people that is the hardest to deal with. And I'm saying that not in a demeaning way, but also the one that is most likely to run for the door the quickest. Because precisely if they have what they perceive as a better opportunity, well, they're just not going to wait for the guillotine to come down. They will leave before, especially the good one, which are precisely the one you don't want to lose. So, in terms of incentivizing, because there are also people that are easier to incentivize, from a mentality standpoint, they are definitely the people you have to put the group of people you have to put the most money on. If you're able to work out something with a buyer or carve it off your own earnings. Hey, after all, why not? Why not saying that you decide in your own head, if you're the owner of the company, that 10% of the proceeds, you will use them to take care of your own people. What's wrong about that? Absolutely nothing. Actually, I mean, it's moral, I think. It's a moral way to do it.
Well, how's that tied into the post-close success? Because would you still care about their post-close success?
You do. I mean, because personally, you also invested a lot. So you don't like to see your own brand just...
So this is on the general, taking care of the people in general, and that's why you would sort of do something like that.
Well, you do care because whatever, especially if you're an industry specialist, it's always a small world. And you will find those people again in 10 years, in 15 years, in 5 years. You will need help at some point. You never know. You never know. I mean, heck, the first company I sold in the US, I found a person who was on the acquisition team 20 years later, sitting on the board meeting of a company I was working with.
That's
You know,
cool.
so people who tend to be industry specialists, uh, always be careful, manage your long-term relationship, don't burn bridges, and don't treat people bad. It will come back at you. If you don't do it for the moral side of it, of taking care of the people who are around you, do it for your own self-preservation.
Yeah, it's a good principle to live around. Just do the others good, and it'll come back. That's your reputation you're building. With and it's other functional leads that probably come in the deal as needed. How do you prepare that leadership team about the sale? Like, what's that conversation look like? Because even you've mentioned it's hard to get around creating the negative skepticism. How do you get that alignment so that they can actually do this work? I mean, what the buyer we talked about before of their expectations around the information they're going to want, but they're also going to want that collaboration, knowing that this is the team members that they're going to be working with in the future.
Again, I'm going to be repetitive, but I would say, one, do your own diligence on the buyer. I mean, and try and know some example of other acquisition and be able to allocate to it. I mean, explain to your own people, hey, you know what? I mean, look at them. They did that with company XYZ a year ago, and this is what it became. And most of the people, all of the people are still there, and it's working great. And because it's a big company, they had better benefits and everything, better programs and a better 401k. If you can establish that, it's great. I mean, if you're on the other hand and you know that it's going to be a brutal consolidation, and that, if you have a manufacturing operation, it's going to be scratched off and rolled into a larger plant, and the people will be given a deal. If they're given a deal, either you relocate to the other side of the country or you're fired. If you know that's what's going to happen, then you better think about a monetary incentive to cooperate. Because, regardless how strong you want it, you can get internal sabotage. People may work, your own people may turn against you and work against you in an acquisition. If they don't want it to happen, when you look at a set of numbers, it's a set of numbers, but there is always a story behind it. And either you present the good side of the story to the acquirer, or you present the negative side. You say, well, it looks great now, but you know what? This, and this may happen in the next 6 months. Okay. Well, all of a sudden, you created for yourself another 2 weeks of due diligence. The buyer wanting to look at a lot more things and talk to other people and get second opinion or get an expert to come in and make some form of review on this and that. So yeah, it's important. Not to turn the people inside as your enemies in the process, and try to again, either present a way where it's going to be better for them personally. Because when it comes to the company is going to be sold, there is no group anymore. And everyone realizes, with very few exceptions, that there will be some consolidation, either departmental or 100% consolidation of everything, manufacturing, sales, administration, finance, and boom, all day.
Is that the goal, is be as upfront as possible?
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, and always keep in the back of your mind that the transaction may fail. So there will be a morning after. There will be a morning where you have to wake up on your bedside. You have someone who you made clear you don't care really about, and money is more important to you than that person, regardless of what you've said in the past. So yeah, of course, it's, I make it sound like there is no happy endings, but from a human standpoint, It's true. It's rare that you see people blooming. It happens. I mean, I've seen it in one cell. The person who started working for the company as a forklift driver. She became production supervisor. She became plant manager. And as she was literally a diamond on the rough, the acquiring company recognized that and made her plant manager of a much, much larger plant. And that person, I mean, had a great career and went from what a forklift driver is making to plant manager of a huge manufacturing unit with several hundred employees, all of that in the course of 7 years, 8 years. So it's just sure that person is going to be happy, but that's the exception that confirms the norm, that most people are not.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. There's an opportunity post-close, but even when you describe it of your leadership team, there's still this level of uncertainty, so you can't promise or put any guarantees and saying, hey, we're doing this deal with the intentions to get the best outcomes for everybody. But
again, it goes back to having some serious conversation with the person or group of person who ultimately will decide the future of the transaction at a high level, not an intermediary, but because the intermediary is just that. It's an intermediary and it's going to relay whatever is being told. And if you really cannot talk to that group of people, maybe you're better off passing off and wait for something better to come around. Because again, I mean, if you have no idea what's the mindset of those people, what they're trying to accomplish, and what form of guarantee executive at a high level put a high value on their word. And if you can get from the CEO of the company or the CFO of the company that's acquiring you, yes, we will take care of your people or of your 10 key people, and we will dedicate an envelope of that much. Yeah, maybe that person will renege on its word, but I would say 90% of the cases they won't. And they consider that they're bound by what they said, even at a time where they had little or insufficient information. But if you frame it right at the beginning, if you establish yourself as really caring about that part too, chances are the outcome will be better for everyone.
It sounds like with the buyer, doing diligence on the buyer, we talked about research, some of the backdoor references. What are questions that you would ask the buyer directly to better understand these things?
Be blunt, be direct. And what is the plan? Are you going to keep that unit as operating independently? Are you going to integrate that unit in your larger corporation? If you do that, how soon? How quick? And they don't approach you having no idea what the heck they're going to do. I mean, so they have a plan. And they approach, or you would hope. Or you would hope.
Yeah, if that happens and it doesn't sound like they know what they're doing, that's probably a pretty big red flag for you right there.
Yeah, well, there is some sort of design behind it,
Is there things that you're assessing their strategic view and the opportunity with your company where you have, maybe you're in a situation where a bank is running a process and you have multiple buyers that you're entertaining, where you're understanding their strategy to get a sense of, I see how they can create value here. This company has a much greater opportunity to create value. Is that part of your thinking consideration?
Yeah, it should. I mean, it should, absolutely. Well, from our previous conversation that I'm a big believer about running different deals at the same time, even if it's even more exhausting and demanding and everything. But the single potential acquirer situation is not working in your favor ever. And if you're putting yourself in that situation, I mean, at least have some sort of breakup fee or whatever. I mean, so that if that person cost you other potential deals, you walk away with something for your company. Well,
How
that
much
sounds
how
like
much breakup fee
tricky.
should I be negotiating for?
As high as you can. Give a call to Elon Musk. He will tell you. I mean, he's in the midst of it with Twitter, isn't he?
Right.
So, so as high as you can, as you can. But it cannot be outrageous, of course. But I don't know. I would say
that
something that would
breakup fee?
represent.
Is that breakup fee then in the LOI and legally binding?
Yeah. No. No. Of course. Yeah. It's definitely in the LOI. Absolutely. It's in the first document you will exchange. Absolutely.
And I guess this goes to the legal
Yes.
question and how complex you can make that language on what actually defines. But at the end of the day, if you're not going to close, you're not going to.
That's why you need a good counsel. I mean, because sure, I mean, the moment you put that breakup fee, I mean, that LOI is going to get a whole lot longer. Because it's going to try to define what circumstances, whose fault is it, and this and that. Is it you didn't provide the information? Is it them? They walked away. Did you misrepresent? Are they walking away on their own and you did not know misrepresentation? So yeah, I mean, but at least it gives both sides an incentive not to just have a knee-jerk reaction.
Right. Absolutely. Is there anything else you'd ask the other executive when putting a deal together, understanding what's your plan? Do you get into what's your plan with me? What are some of these other things that you would really want to dig in and make sure you don't have I
think it's rather, in the very initial phase, it's frowned upon. And I think when you are in that situation, you have also to sell yourself, not only your company, but yourself to the potential acquirer during the due diligence process and during the subsequent meetings that would ensue, why they should retain you permanently or for a period of time, and why it should be for a significant amount of money. So yes, I mean, but I don't think this is the first thing you put out there.
Right.
Because
more understand the rationale from their perspective and how they're going to execute it.
Right, exactly. Because and if you put that out there first, it's showing also how insecure you are. So
yeah. What about like culture and management style? Would you sort of dig into that?
If you ask a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I mean, what is the culture of your company? And you're going to get a cookie cutter answer, something that has been worked through, all the level of corporate and vetted by the legal department and so forth and so on. Again, try to talk to people and try to talk to people who used to work in that company, not necessarily who are there because they will fear for their own hide. But if, again, you're an industry specialist, you have many years in an industry, it's a small world, you will find someone, one way or another, who has either worked or who has connection with someone who worked there, and we can help you figuring out what is the real culture, beyond what you put on the wall, but what is it really like?
That's good to know. I'm thinking of like worst case situation. I feel like we're going to go back and touch on some similar points, but worst case, you sell a business with a lot of regrets, especially if it's a baby with a lot of regrets.
Yep.
With especially if it's the baby you've built up and really made something, and then you're looking at it as a sinking, burning ship. Yep. And we talked about the diligence that you should do in the buyer to build that confidence that the company is going in the right direction. Is there anything, and I almost think of it as, we use the term deal fever, right? And we refer to it on the buy side where you just get fixated to do the deal. And there's a lot of forms of that I've been guilty of. But on the sell side, if that same thing applies, where you sort of you start thinking about the check and, what kind of jet model you can buy and stuff like that.
Sure.
yeah, how do you?
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, and at that point, I mean, again, when that deal is closed and the money is in the bank and you see a big amount that you've never seen in the bank, and the natural reaction probably is to say, well, I can do it again. I did it once, I can do it again. But guess what? I mean, very rarely does that happen. And, that second act or that third act, for a startup, for a new business to be successful, it's about skills, but it's also about luck. And whoever tells you no, it was strictly a carefully mapped out road. I mean, we had a killer business plan and this and that. That person, in my humble opinion, is somewhat delusional. There is a lot of things that you don't control, particularly what your competitor or potential competitor may do or may not do. And that's going to help you or stop you. So, if you were lucky enough to create something from nothing and grow it to a $50 million company in a few years, well, a lot of things had to fall into place. Well, and again, I'm also talking about my world of knowledge, which is the food industry. Okay, if you find a cure for something and you're in the pharmaceutical industry, I mean, that's a different ball game, obviously, because you found something that is unique. But again, like we said before, when you're manufacturing food, very rarely is there something absolutely unique that has never been seen before, and that is going to change dramatically the eating habits of an entire population. I mean, how many times does that happen? So, you had a lot of factors that happen through work, but also through luck. I remember when I was back in school, I had a teacher who was saying that being successful in an exam is a combination of three things. I mean, it's a combination of work, it's a combination of luck, and it's a combination of showing up. I mean, but showing up well rested. I mean, with a good mind, and pretty much the same could be said from a business. You need luck. You do need luck. You do need someone to stumble or one of the key competitor on that market to make a strategic mistake, to take the price increase when they shouldn't have, to have changed their packaging or changed their logistic networks, or they've done something, or they fired their broker network. And all of a sudden, they created an army of people against them. And those are the things you don't control. I mean, there is no way that in a business plan you can say, well, in 3 years, I mean, your competitor is going to fire his entire broker network to save money, and we will just be there to scoop them up. So you don't know that, but the reality is that when you look at a lot of success stories, this is what happened. At some point, something happened, something that was not in your control, and that helped you.
So if I think about that in the context of Deal Fever, I think that what I took out of it is don't forget about all the hard work that you put in and luck to get to where you're at, to be mindful of it. I'm still, the other part of me is like, if you get a good offer, you should probably take it. And that's where I'm wondering, like, that, how do you go through that thinking, right? If all of a sudden, even for my business right now, I run today, I'm at a really excited point about the organic growth, and that, maybe a year or two, we're going to start exercising our own M&A. But then all of a sudden I get, a very significant, it's got to be up there, like 9-figure plus offer. And then like, how does that, I don't know if you've been in that situation, and then
it's a combination
when it comes to the wire about, do I do it or not do it?
It's a combination of factors. And, your personal life. Where are you? At what stage are you in your personal life?
It's just, I just wonder, because it's like an irreversible decision. If there's something that you would say from experience, like, hey, just here's a double check just to make sure, and thinking of, because once you move that track and deal's done, I mean, that's a big change.
If you're asking me if there are situations where I personally regretted having doing it, yeah, because precisely because at that moment where you got the money, you got everything, you have such a belief and confidence in yourself that you think you're going to do it all over again and it's going to be even easier. But it's not. And, and trying to climb back up again, especially again, because in that process, you may have created a situation with your salespeople, with your brokers, with whatever, where they lost in the transaction, and you're starting something new and different, and you're reaching to that same group of people because you like them and they're good. It happened to me where people told me, hey, we work for you for 5 years. We built your company and everything, and then it was sold, and we ended up with nothing within 48 hours of the close of the transaction. So thank you, but no. And I have that happening to me. So yeah, sure. Are you going to regret it? I don't know. Who knows? But
you don't have like the hindsight view of this is what I would have done different, or if I would have thought about that one thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And the second part of that is how much confidence do you have that you can keep growing at the same rate without starting to sell pieces of your company to the point where you lose control and you don't really have a tangible financial benefit of it. Because this is the razor. Okay, I need more money, so I'm getting a new person, 10%, 15%, and it goes and it goes and it goes, and you end up with 51, and you're at that 51, and maybe in the 49 you have a group of people or one person who is far richer than you are, and you get through a tough time. So that person is going to okay, now is a good time to take control of the company. And this is the point where you end up with nothing. You've lost control of your company. You've lost everything. And you walk away with nothing. So I guess this is where having a good group of people you trust, mentors, and people you can reach out to, and who are going to talk to you candidly, because they have been through that, because they have no vested financial interest in their answer, where they're going to put it straight to you and make you see things that you may not want to see yourself. But certainly, I think it's a better situation than to sell. To just walk away. With a significant bundle of money, rather than putting yourself in a situation where you try to keep going at it, but some of the momentum is gone, or the next step is going to require so much more capital that you can't, and you get another someone at like I said, it's a 20% participation, and then you go another one, and within 3 years you've gone. And that's it. You've lost control of the company because a hiccup will happen, cost overrun will happen, something will happen where you have to go back to the well. The bank won't do it. So what's left? Your minority shareholders. And your minority shareholders will tell you, yeah, sure, we'll help you, but now we have control. Or you're no longer the decision maker. You don't own 51% anymore.
I like it. I think that's why it's good to have that advisor circle that you mentioned of some trusted confidants that can give you different perspectives and help you think through this. Why do people walk out of deals? Like if you get something signed in LOI, you get to that point, have you ever come across something where you start learning about their integration plan and saying, we got to back out or anything like that?
You work. Yeah. it's really, really hard to walk away from a big check. But if in the first place that big check came to you as a possibility, it will happen again. So if really something, and that happens, and where
Give me an example.
midway
Like, what's
through
the thing? I don't know if you ever walked away from a deal, but what are things that would cause you to do that? After LOI too. I mean, you kind of signed
price
something.
reduction, price reduction. I mean, someone is telling you, when you start the conversation and the LOI, I mean, there is at least a basis for a price calculation. And mid-course, I mean, the people doing the due diligence are going to come back to you and say, oh, well, man, I mean, we really didn't know that. I mean, and that's changing everything. So, either we walk away or you accept a complete revision of that deal structure. And this is what the new deal structure is going to be. Well, walk. It's hard, but at least, because if you say yes, I mean, you've also sent the message that it can be done again, and it will be done again. The people you're dealing with are not here to help you. They're here to make the best deal for their own company. So, walking. Well, there is no shame in walking away. There is no. And if you have something, someone else will be interested in it. If, of course, you have something that is not of much interest and completely duplicable, and the people realize it during the due diligence, say, you know what, rather than buying this company for 20 million, we could do the same dancing for 5 and spend 15 million in marketing and squash them as a bag. And then, okay, you're in a tough place.
So there's some big material things you should be comfortable knowing when to call it off.
It's, I keep repeating that, but it's people doing business with people. So you got to have an opportunity to talk to the decider or deciders, plural, and to get a sense of what kind of people they are. I mean, you got to do your own research on what have they done in the past. Are they behaving like, they're going to discard you if it's more convenient to them, or do they attach a certain value to their image or to their words? Besides doing your due diligence and on those people, on the companies they lead, and talking to them, what can you do?
Well, I guess we can head to wrapping things up. We want parting advice. What's your advice for choosing the best buyer for your business?
Don't go necessarily for the best known one, for the bigger name. There is an example that sticks in my mind. A company that Starbucks acquired many years ago, California-based company called La Boulange. I don't know if you remember that, but a few years ago, Starbucks acquired, it's a baking company called La Boulange, and they had some really good product. And at the time, Starbucks had decided that they would acquire them and roll out La Boulange as a brand in all the Starbucks nationwide. And you started seeing some conversion, and you had banners and displays in the cake window and everything. And overnight, that thing boom, vanished. And I know that the people who did the deal didn't walk away happy. They got engulfed into legal issue, in this, in that, and that wasn't a good experience at all for them. So, it goes to, again, who are you talking to? Figure it out. Figure out if you're dealing with a family-owned company or a company where a person or a group of persons, as I will say, if it's a completely anonymous decision, like a bank is doing into a black box and something comes back as a verdict and we don't know why. So that's it, essentially. But I don't have a magic recipe here. for sure.
Stay intact with the people and stay aligned, and know who you're dealing with. Do your diligence, even from the
Yep.
sell side.
Yep.
I asked last time, what's the craziest thing you've seen in M&A? I don't know if you have another crazy story or even crazier. We talked about the tantrums that pop up during M&A deals, and you had the story about throwing the stack of papers. But yeah, I
Yep.
don't know. You see anything else crazy like that?
No, 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 no. That was a pretty good one. I mean, you know, in itself, I mean, that was a pretty good one. No, and I have not seen anything outrageous like that. It's most of the time it's a lot more subdued, but the result sometimes, I mean, will be the same. You know, people walk out, people throw tantrums, people use tantrums as a negotiating tool.
That's actually one I'd like to learn and use, or see, or learn how to use.
No, no, no. It was very well. Hey, you know, we had a president who did it very well.
Well, and it worked.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, that's the crazy one. So use your tantrums. How about some French M&A terms? You got any good French M&A terms for me?
Not really, because you know the thing is, I mean, the vernacular, the terminology is all English. It's like the
Well, the
Anglo-Saxon
French,
population did. Yeah, no, they are. They are. I mean, LOI could be lettre d'intention, but it's a servile translation of the English version, and most of the time, even in actual documents, you're going to see the English term. Because the translation looks goofy. I mean, there is nothing coming to mind, but it just doesn't sound right, or it's too long. And that's a great thing with the English language. It's very concise,
yeah.
and it uses a lot of acronyms like LOI or things like that, where the European language tend to be longer to explain something. And there is not that massive use of acronyms like here, you know, LOI, ASAP, M&A,
If you
all
want
of
to say
those
the
things.
deal is dead.
Uh, the deal is dead. Nous sommes finis. We are finished.
Okay. I was going to say the kid, then the response would be the deal is never dead.
Well,
But I
yeah,
get
no,
what you're
sure. I
saying.
mean,
There's no clear, yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Okay.
well,
So,
no, actually, I don't agree with you. I mean, no, you have to be able to say the deal is dead. If you're not, you won't win.
there you go. There you go.
You know, entrepreneurs, and that's something important to remember. Entrepreneurs are somewhat gamblers. I mean, they are a group of talented people who probably could have made a very nice career in something a whole lot safer, without risking their house and their lifestyle saving on this and that. So there is, you know, you're always dealing with people who are by nature a little bit of a gambler. And I don't know if you're playing poker or anything, but you know, it's like giving up a hand. And sometimes you have to give up a hand.
Hmm. That's great advice. Know when to truly walk away. All right, Frederic, thank you so much for coming
Thank you,
back and
Tyson.
continuing our
Thank you.
conversation.
Thank
Till
you.
next time. How do you say it in French? Here's to the deal.
What?
My closing lines. Here's to the deal. How would you say that in French?
Here's to the deal. Vive, even in French, we would say the deal. Vive le deal. Vive le
Vive
deal.
le deal.
Vive le deal. As stupid as it sounds.
Actually, I like the sound of it. Vive le deal.
Vive le deal. Or vive l'affaire. But l'affaire, you know, that word in French has so many multiple meanings. And so it doesn't have the percussive value of the English word.
Vive la deal is simpler for me to, as American to say. All right.
Really, nothing coming to mind. No.
No. Cheers. I appreciate it. Thanks again, and vive
Thank
la
you.
deal.
Vive le deal. Le. I mean, that's another thing. I mean, sometimes we take the feminine side of a word and sometimes the masculine side of the word, which is, and it's interesting also from a mindset, because it so happened that most of the time positive thing will take a masculine pronoun, and negative thing or weak thing will take a feminine one. And that's something that's embedded in the language, I guess, in the French language anyway. But it's un deal, not une. It's le deal.
Le deal.
Not la deal. After all, there is no reason why it's one versus the other. But anyway.
Thanks so much.